Hey, I think we could be live. Let's see. Online, live. Hey, everybody. This is Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. Welcome to Delta CX TV. I just set up deltacx.tv to take you to our YouTube channel. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you know when we're live and you can get involved in the conversation. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn. Today's podcast is Debunking UX Myths. And a week ago, I asked you through a post on LinkedIn to send me some of the things that are UX myths or things you are tired of hearing at your job or a previous job so that we could debunk these. Brandon says, hi from Toronto. Hi, Brandon. Hi from Europe, where you're going to watch the sun set on me. So we are live. You are welcome to leave comments or ask questions in both the YouTube channel and the LinkedIn channel for those of you who are live. So I'm going to start out here with some things from our LinkedIn post about a week ago, and let me look at some of the things that people wrote in and said, and we will respond to them since a lot of these are UX myths or things we are tired of hearing at our jobs. Let's debunk as many as we can in the next hour, and you write in some of yours too. Our good friend Roger from Texas wrote, quote, we are on the verge of not needing designers because we have standard design templates and patterns. Roger continued to say, people have been saying this at least since Windows 95 was released, and it's as every bit as true now as it was then. So yes, that's another, so great UX myth, also visual design myth, that, if we have a design template, a pattern, a component library, a design system, we're not going to need UX interaction designers or visual designers because we've got our standard templates and anyone can just piece these together and make a great interface, right? Agree? Disagree? Um, hello. Yeah, we got some thumbs up there, so big agreement. So that was one of the ones that we got. That was a great one. Roger sent a few more, so I'm just going to go through all of his. Here's one from Roger. Quote, having a user on the agile design team is equivalent to having a designer. End quote. And he wrote, OMG, is having another patient with the same illness equal to having a doctor? I haven't heard that one, but I can see agile folks saying that we don't really need to have UX on the team because hey, somebody else will pick up their work. But hey, let's put a user, let's bring in a user on the team or into the project, and then we'll really know what the user is thinking and what they need. But of course, that's only one person's opinion, and it could be an absolute fluke or outlier. So we can't totally rely on that. Roger also sent us, quote, testing will automatically lead to great designs, end quote. And his commentary was, how does testing two mediocre ideas magically produce a great one? Just keep doing MRIs until the patient is cured? Testing, like research, is data collection. You still need an expert to read the results and hypothesize a cure. I don't think I can say it better than Roger does. He's a sharp guy who you guys should definitely follow. Roger Belvale. I've always pronounced his name badly, but it's Belveal. He's a smart, insightful guy. He gives us one more. Quote, processes are all that is needed. Anyone on your staff can follow them for the same results as an expert. End quote. And Roger's commentary was, too many things wrong with this to count. If you really think this is true, good luck. Yeah, I think my response to that was we were joking in the LinkedIn discussion. I don't know how many of you watched Saturday Night Live in the 1990s, but my thought was Toonsis the cat can drive, just not very well. And our good friend Marisol wrote, I always remember the episode on The Simpsons where a car company hires Homer to design a car because he is the average user. Well, sure, let's just have him design it. Yeah. So I'm checking the chat rooms for any comments or questions from you guys. Tell me some of the things that you guys hear at your jobs that you know are UX myths or people misunderstanding UX or things like that. Larry Marine wrote into our thing saying, I'm a full stack UX developer. And he said, what code does a UX developer write? If user equals true, then set delight equals true. Everybody loved that one. Randy had a mountain of them. Good friend Randy in Pennsylvania. He said, a few things I've seen that make me shake my head. One was, don't listen to users. Obviously, we see that in all kinds of flavors out there. There's always someone who says, oh, users don't really know what they want, so you shouldn't listen to them. And there's pieces to that that's true and pieces to that that's not true, again, in my opinion. Certainly, in general, users don't always know what they want, and they sometimes can't even articulate or pinpoint their problems. So they're sometimes not the best people to come up with a solution. So we do need to listen to users, but not necessarily what they tell us they want. Or sometimes you see a variation like, "Don't build what users want." Well, hold on a second. We've got to build something. We should build what they need, whether or not it's what they told us they want, whether it's not it's what they think they want. We have to do the proper research to figure out what customers and users need so that we can build that. Let me know your thoughts on this. I know that what's the word? We're delayed about 30 seconds, but we'll see your comments if you share them. Let's see, we've got a handful of people watching in LinkedIn, so come on. Randy also wrote, "You're not innovating if you're not failing a lot." And his commentary was, hurry up and fail your customers, folks. I definitely hear a lot the whole fail fast thing. And I think that it is a fallacy. I think it is one of those phrases we have to stop saying because ultimately there's nothing wrong with failing fast if it happens behind the scenes internal to our company. If we are releasing live products and services to our customers and those are failing and failing our potential or paying customers, that's bad. There's nothing good about that. You could say we learned something, but we learned it too late. So fail fast can work if we are failing due to good UX testing that's happening early enough in the process so that the customer never has to experience that failure. Randy also gives us real designers don't have portfolios. I do see that one thrown around a little bit. Now, I do know some real designers don't have good or any UX portfolios because they've worked on so many confidential projects that they don't have a portfolio. So perhaps the meaning behind this one is, ooh, if you're a real designer, you don't have a portfolio because you've done so much good confidential work that you couldn't share it. But of course, that's not going to be true for everyone. Not everyone is at that point in their career or has confidential projects. Maybe their projects have gone live and are public and can be shared. So I would say that most people in UX will have some sort of portfolio. I tell people where they can't show things, maybe try telling some of the story of their project, even if it's confidential and you can't show it and you can't say who it was for. Maybe you can tell the story generally. But I think most people, even researchers, will be able to show something that they did with some of their process and put that together as a portfolio. Again, not everybody can. I get people writing to me every time I talk about portfolios. They say, I don't have a portfolio. Everything I do is confidential. I hear you. But I would still not agree with real designers don't have a portfolio. Same with sometimes you hear, oh, portfolios are going out of style. You don't need them. I don't think that's going to be true. I hope that as companies understand UX more and more, that they will be better assessing candidates. And some of that assessment, maybe not all of it, but some of that assessment will be your portfolio. So I don't think a portfolio is going to go out of style. Of course, Randy gives us a few more great ones here, like get a UX job after 8 or 12 weeks. Yeah, that is unfortunate. Obviously, there are some people who can take a boot camp or trade school course, graduate with their certificate, and find a great full-time job. Those people exist. But is that the dominant experience for the people who have pursued UX education in that way? It does not seem to be the dominant experience. It seems to be more of the exception. So unfortunately, many people who are being told, "Hey, go to this boot camp, go to this trade school, you're going to be job ready in 8 to 12 weeks." Well, if you're not job ready when you come out, that is a promise that's been broken. And I think we've seen that promise broken a lot. So that's one. Another one that I want to kind of add to that is sometimes I see, well, if you got out of a boot camp and you didn't get a job, you're not putting in the work. And my response to that is don't victim blame. Many people have been scammed by boot camps and trade schools. Don't make it worse by making it seem like they don't have a job because they're not trying hard enough. I've spoken to some of these people. Some of you have written to me. You are trying and you care, and some of you are desperate, and I don't want to victim blame. So if we can please stop saying, if you didn't get a UX job, you didn't try hard enough, get that out of here. Take that out. Randy gave us a few more last week when I asked for some of these UX myths and strange phrases we hear. UX is dead. Or he said, insert other things here for clickbait. UCD is dead. I would have to agree with Randy that I think these things, that's another garbage thing. UX is definitely not dead, though many people are out there trying to kill it, and many of them come up with phrases like this: UX is dead, so we all want to be design thinkers, which isn't UX. So there's a lot of people out there trying to write a lot of clickbait articles. UX is dead. UCD is dead. Something's always dead somehow in these articles. But funny enough, if you read a lot of these articles, it actually says these things are alive. But here's something different we should do. And to me, it's your job to be a critical thinker. When you see an article like that, especially if the article is mostly or wholly garbage, don't clap for it. Don't press like. Don't share it. If you leave it alone, it sinks to the bottom of the algorithm ocean. Don't share it out. Don't amplify it. There's so many garbage articles out there, especially on Medium. Just let it go. If you see garbage article on LinkedIn, don't press like because it says UX. Keep going. Think critically about it. Randy also gave us fewer clicks means great usability. And we see variations of that myth when you hear like everything must be within 3 clicks. And these are left over from I don't know when, but they're not necessarily true anymore. The reality is that customers, users, you and me, we all want to do things in as few clicks and steps as possible. So no matter what, good customer experience and good user experience are going to be things that have the fewest steps or clicks or screens, however you want to think of it, as possible. But that doesn't mean we have to count that number and we have to say, oh, if it's more than X, then it's bad. Because we've all done things online that took 4 clicks and it worked out okay and we liked it and we got our task done. So it's really about good research that helps us understand the user's tasks and then interaction design of the best executions of the best ideas that will help people get their tasks done. Again, we are live right now on LinkedIn and on YouTube. You are welcome to add your comments and your questions. For those of you who are watching the video, my camera is acting a little bit slow. I've ordered a new one, so I know my camera's a little bit choppy. That will be fixed in about a week. But hopefully the sound is good. But please write in with some of your myths or some of the stuff you hear at work that you have to deal with. Randy sent us another one. Accessibility just means better color contrast. Yeah, obviously, if people don't understand accessibility, it's really easy to think that we just need to make the font bigger or change some of our colors. But sometimes people think, oh, accessibility, that's just making this work for blind people. But if you really start studying accessibility, and if you're listening to this, you should be studying accessibility. You will learn, and I hope to do a future podcast with some accessibility experts to make sure people know more about it. But it's about way more than just colors. Accessibility is about making things easy to learn learn, and easy to use for all of the possible users, whether these users are have visual issues, whether these users have mobility issues or cognitive, emotional, visual, hearing. All of these things play into accessibility. And if you think about it, nearly all of us have these issues. I saw the Microsoft accessibility document the other day, and they said there are people with permanent disabilities, and their example was like someone with one arm, like that arm's not coming back. There's someone with a temporary disability, someone with a broken arm who might have it in a cast or a sling, and so they can't use it, but they might be able to use it later. And then there is what they called a situational, you could say, disability. What if someone is carrying a baby in one arm and that arm is unavailable to use and they're trying to do something with their other hand, which may or may not be their dominant hand? So we have to think about people who aren't just in some sort of health condition or body condition, but also people who, based on their situation, just can't hear what someone is saying. It's a loud place. Can't speak. They lost their voice because they're sick. Can't use their hand this week. I was just talking to one of the friends of the show. He just got his hand out of a cast. He had accessibility needs for all that time his hand was in a cast. So really important to learn more about what accessibility is about. Tanya says, I can't find portfolio review in your website. Okay, great question, Tanya. Let me just type up a quick link and put it up on the online here. Let's see. I think this is my portfolio review link, and I'll share it out. Portfolio-review. I think it should be this. Let's try it out and put it up on the screen. Let's see. Press the right button here. No, that's the wrong button. I'm pressing the wrong buttons today. I have a new system that I'm playing with. You guys can tell me what you think of it. Okay, so I believe you can find my portfolio review link at deltacx.link, which is my URL shortener, /portfolio-review. That will dump you into my online system where you can sign up for a free portfolio review. Everybody gets one free portfolio review. And then after that, I might charge for another one, but that would be where you would go. If you don't see any times available, I'll try to put more in, but I think I put some in maybe at the end of February. So let me know. Thanks, Tanya. Let's see, no questions in LinkedIn. So I'm going to keep going because people sent a lot of these in. Brett sent us, my favorite is when I'm asked, is the UX done yet? Oh, tough, tough, tough. Let's see. What else did we get from people? Yeah, so somebody else had accessibility. Nobody really talks. Allison wrote, nobody really talks about this, but what about when part of a designer's requirements are to make the experience accessible, and they go ahead and try to create the experience when they've never tried to navigate with their keyboard or use a screen reader? Let's debunk that approach. A person who has only ever driven a car can't possibly design the perfect bicycle, and let's debunk that accessible design must be ugly. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, so again, I was just saying that accessibility is about so much more than being kind of a one-dimensional thing about color or a one-dimensional thing about blindness. It's really about so many things that are permanent, temporary, or situational. Also, as Allison points out, accessible design does not have to be ugly. It's about making things easier to use for everybody, making text easier to read for everybody. I don't have a disability other than I'm supposed to wear glasses, and I don't. But I don't really have a disability, but I can't tell you how much I struggle with tiny checkboxes. I can't tell you how much I struggle with tiny grab bars, like when I'm editing video and I'm trying to stretch out something, and there's only one pixel where you get that grab bar, otherwise you get a pointer. Oh my God, that one pixel is killing me. I see it in Axure also. I have the same needs that other people have, and it's not because I have an accessibility need or a disability. We can make things easier for everybody when we consider these things. That not everybody might have the finest motor skills to get that one pixel where your cursor changes to something else that you need. So thanks to Allison for chiming in there. We got one from Brian that says, here's one that never seems to work in practice. Let's prototype first and then study the user if necessary. Whew. We see this one a lot from people who are proponents of we don't need to do research. We can work from guesses and assumptions. We can work from some idea. Please check the portfolio review link. Is my link bad? Let's see. deltacx.link/portfolio-review. Oh, that isn't working. You're right. Tanya, you're right. But I'm in the middle of this podcast, so let me get back to you later, and then we'll figure that out. I am so sorry, Tanya. You are totally right. That is not working, and I will have to figure that out. So let me take that off the screen since that link is not working, and I will have to redirect my URL shortener to something that does work. So Tanya, hold on to that link because it is a URL shortener, so I can just make it later on point to the right thing. So just give me some time after this broadcast and I will fix that. So yeah, back to let's prototype first and then study the user if necessary. It is always necessary to study the user. Usually any company that says we don't have to research with users, we know who our customers are, we know who they need, that is confidence sliding into arrogance. And it's really important to not skimp on or skip the UX research or the customer research. It's just too important. Without it, we are possibly headed on the wrong path, and that path can be risky for our company. It can be expensive. So we don't want to work with guesses and assumptions. We don't think guesses and assumptions save time and money in the long run. Remember, if you're just looking at this box of time and you go, well, don't do any research now, just make some guesses about the customer. Boom, we did it. We made some guesses. That might look like it saved time or money here. But how about the whole arc of our project? And how about after that project is released to the public? Did we still save time, money, sanity for ourselves or other departments by guesses and assumptions we made up front? Meanwhile, there's things like Six Sigma, which say don't make guesses and assumptions, replace them with good data. So just a reminder there. Let's see, we had a couple of other ones. Let's see. Oh, there's one that I wrote. Where did it go? Because I saw one go by. Here it is. I saw somebody there. I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of the poop is hitting the fan about Lambda School. The Verge did a great write-up on Lambda School, though honestly, it was just the tip of the iceberg based on what I know. But it was pretty accurate and honest. So look that up. There's a Verge article on Lambda School, which is a UX boot camp that is badly failing people, though not in the way that that it sounds like I would mean. And somebody from Lambda School tried to, it sounded like in the article they were trying to explain or excuse why some of the instructors at Lambda School were not particularly deeply knowledgeable in UX. And the way that the guy put it was, quote, "You don't need to learn to tie your shoes from a PhD. You just need to learn from someone else who can tie their shoes." Now, thing one, I'm not sure you want to, who just learned to tie their shoes? A toddler. I'm not sure a toddler makes the best teacher. I think this quote, while intending to explain or excuse why boot camps are typically taught by people who just graduated the boot camp or have little or no experience in the UX domain, I think it undoes itself because ultimately none of us who work in UX would say, you know what? UX is so easy to learn and so easy to teach. It's like tying your shoes. As soon as you learn to tie your shoes, well, just go teach that to someone else. Doesn't matter if you've grown, doesn't matter if you've achieved more depth in your craft. You just have to know how to fill out a couple of boxes and then, hey, teach it to someone else. So I think that this quote really undoes itself, and it really says a lot about Lambda School in that it sounds like they really aren't that invested in the quality of what they're giving you because, hey, you just need to learn from someone else who can tie their shoes. And I've heard other boot camp instructors say the same type of thing, not just Lambda. So I'm not just pooping on Lambda, but I've heard other boot camp instructors say, Hey, you don't need an expert to teach you UX. You just need someone who's already learned it before you. And that was their way of explaining why their school was hiring recent grads as instructors. And so there were people who were graduating the boot camp or trade school and nearly immediately were now an instructor of that topic. So someone who just learned it, maybe learned it well, maybe didn't learn it well, never had a job in UX or in the industry or in the domain, but now we're going to be teaching you. So I think we have to really keep our critical thinking hats on and remember that while these platitudes sound nice, that I don't need to learn to tie my shoes from an expert, and I only need to learn from someone who learned it before I did. That we have to think about that, put that into some other industries. Do you want to learn a tennis serve from the person who just learned how to do a tennis serve? Or do you want to learn a tennis serve from a tennis pro who has competed in various tournaments, who has won tournaments? Who do you want to learn from? So remember, we're live right now. Feel free to chime in. We've got Larry Marine chiming in. Good to see you, Larry. Larry says, my favorite reply to clients who don't want to do research up front. If you don't think you have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you will have time to do it again? Very true. Also covered in my book. That magically we think we don't have time now to invest a little bit more time or money into a proper approach to research and determining the correct problems in depth. But magically, we'll have that time later when we have to fix or redo this. And I'll tell you why our companies think they do. My hypothesis is that whoever is tracking the money that our company spends stops tracking the money when that feature goes live. Okay, what did we spend on that project? Ooh, here's what we spent on business analysts and product managers and UX and engineers and DevOps, and okay, it went live. That's it. That's all the money we spent. But that's not all the money you spent. You spent money on customer support to have to support this thing, especially if it's a dead, sad dog. You spent money on social media managers to have to calm down angry tweeters. You spent money on somebody who was hopefully gathering feedback because Agile says we have to gather feedback and feed it back into the system and possibly change the requirements and make sure we're going in the right direction. Who did you pay to gather the feedback? Sometimes that's marketing, sometimes that's CX or UX, sometimes it's a data analyst group. So somebody got paid to gather feedback, and of course, I'm suggesting that that feedback gathering be more proactive and less reactive. So you still did spend money after it was released. The only difference was someone stopped counting. And so your company doesn't even have an accurate look at what they're spending, especially when something goes bad. When something goes bad, that money is magically disappearing and probably somehow baked into the next project or agile release or whatever. Somehow that when your engineering team has to stop working on the current story points and go back and fix something else, it's probably coming out of the new project's budget. So imagine if we counted this stuff better, we wouldn't say crap like this because we wouldn't be lying to ourselves. Let's stop lying to ourselves. Larry also says, what are some common mistakes in persona development or usage that you've seen? That is a good question. It's not totally on topic, but it is a good question. Today we were talking about UX myths and debunking UX myths. So I think to stay a little bit on topic, I'll kind of make a little angle of that question and say, what are some ways that personas can be used incorrectly that might turn them into myths? I would say that certainly the biggest problem that I see with personas is when personas are made incorrectly. Very often you'll hear about people who didn't do any research and they just guessed at personas. Maybe they guessed at them alone in a room. Maybe they guessed at them as part of a design sprint or a design thinking exercise because, ooh, we're empathizing with the user if we make stuff up about them based on what we think or guess that they do. And that, of course, is confidence sliding into arrogance. So personas can definitely be junk when they are poorly constructed. And of course, I think while Larry is not a big fan of personas all the time, I think we can agree that personas if you're using them, need to be more task-based. Another mistake I see, especially with all the portfolios I've been looking at, is some people have been focusing on demographics too much. You know, this persona is a housewife and she's 32 and she lives in the Midwest and she's a homeowner. And I've even seen some personas that were like, and this person is white, but this person is mixed race. And my response was, do you design differently for white people than mixed race people? And what's this labeling crap? This feels bad to even say out loud. So stay away from demographics and personas for the most part. Obviously, there are some projects where we do design differently for men or women, especially if it might be around their personal health and things that are subject to one gender that wouldn't be another. But in general, we don't design differently for people who are men or women. We don't design differently from people who are from the Midwest versus from a coastal city. We don't design differently for people who have different skin color. So we've got to get that stuff out of personas, and personas have to. Yes, thank you. Marisol says it best. Friend of the show, Marisol, ¿cómo está? Personas are not the target market. So personas, marketing very often says, well, here's our target market, and these are the demographics we know about them. But as you'll know from hearing me and reading my articles, and if you've read my book, I talk about it there as well, that when people start getting into the whole target market thing, they get really lazy and they start putting people in buckets. And I know this very well because I get put into the bucket of women in their 40s who by now must have kids who are college age. So I get endless emails, even from companies who should know if I have kids or not, like my own bank. And so is your kids are going back to school? And I'm always like, I don't have kids. Don't you guys know this? But it's that lazy target market bucket of Deb's 40 something. She must have college age kids. Send her those ads. So, yeah, be careful of this stuff. So, I think that when we think about personas, there's definitely a lot of misconceptions around them and a lot of poor uses of them. But to me, a lot of them have come out of design thinking and design sprints, where the emphasis is on speed. How quickly can we put together some of these personas and some of these artifacts and some of these documents to show this stuff? Someone recently told me that someone wrote an article. Yeah, stereotypes. Marisol says don't rely on stereotypes. It would be a stereotype to say Debbie must have at least one college age kid because she's X years old. Macron recently wrote a great article, I think he put it on Medium, about interviewing UX researchers at his workplace and how many of them seem to have no real idea of how UX research is properly done, but somehow they've been faking it all this time. And he said a couple of people, one guy he talks about, guy or girl, I don't remember, said, well, I interviewed 6 users and I made 3 personas. That's probably not enough users. So again, we run the risk that if we try to do high speed, I just saw a post go by on LinkedIn before I started that was like, how to do product design faster. Can we please not press like on that? Can we please not share that? Can we please not comment under that? Let it fall into the bottom of the algorithm ocean? Because the last thing we need is to focus on how we all need to work faster. We will work more efficiently if we have people who know what they're doing the right things. We can focus on efficiency, but don't just focus on faster, because then you're falling for a lot of this stuff that comes out of Agile and Scrum that tells us we have to keep going faster and faster, and it's working against us. So those were some of the ones. Tell me more that you guys have. I've got a few more myths I can read you. Tell me more about UX myths that you have heard, myths you hear at work, myths you read in articles online or see passed around LinkedIn. While I wait for you guys to type those, because there is about a 30-second delay, I'm going to read you a couple more from my book. The very end of my book has a little mini chapter called Stop Propagating Myths and Work to Dispel Them. And I've got a couple of the myths in here. One that I've got is great products do fewer things but better. Now, my thought is great products do things better. doesn't have to be fewer. This sounds like something that we told ourselves in an internal meeting that we tried to use to explain away why our product doesn't do more stuff yet or doesn't do as much as a competitor. Well, they do all these things. We do fewer things, but we're doing them better. This just sounds like excuse city. It sounds like something we said to try to help ourselves feel better. Marisol's got a couple ones. Let's jump right on those. People don't scroll. You know, for many years we said people don't scroll, and then everybody got a phone. And if you watch people on the bus, on the subway, walking down the street, what are they all doing? This. Or what are they doing? This. They're scrolling. So we can actually do really junky observational research on this and just look at the people around us all the time and notice, at least sitting on their phones, they are scrolling. I'll tell you about a funny user testing I did last year. I got on a live moderated test for a project we were doing with the agency, my agency, and we had these two women who work very closely together. So they both wanted to test this new thing that we'd never seen before. They were real clients, real customers of our clients. So we were showing them an actual prototype that we had made highly realistic. And the women said to me no less than 4 times, "We won't scroll." We don't scroll. We want everything right there on the screen. We don't want to scroll for anything. We don't scroll. We don't scroll. Meanwhile, I'm watching them. We're doing screen share on Zoom. I can see their screen. And of course, they're scrolling. Of course, they're scrolling. And there was some progressive disclosure, and they would do a certain thing, and then some other things would appear under that, and they would scroll down. And they kept telling me, "Well, we won't scroll." But I'm watching them scroll. So every time they said it, I would just say, "Well, I'll take that into consideration." But meanwhile, they're scrolling. So I know we all like to imagine we don't scroll, or we imagine the customers don't scroll. They mostly do. Let's see. People hate when I say it depends. Marisol, I don't know if I can help you there because you're right. It depends. Marisol also says, she wrote people read, but I'm also thinking she means people don't read. And I'll say that sometimes. I'll say, people hate reading. And the reality is, because I had this talk, I think, with my friend Oz the other day. Oz, I don't know if you're here right now. But I had this talk with Oz maybe some months ago, and the bottom line was people will read if it's something that interests them. When we give them more blah, 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 jargony, sales pitchy crap, okay, they don't read. Maybe they'll skim some bullet points, maybe they'll skim the page, but some people will read it. If you write good stuff, you write relevant stuff, you write concise stuff, people will read some of it. We can't just assume they read nothing, otherwise we'd put no words on the page. We have to find that balance. Okay, we've got some stuff with, yeah, and Marisol says, it depends. If they have a reason, they'll scroll. Totally true. Just like reading. Give me something that I want to scroll to. Like, for example, I have a friend who loves to send me YouTube videos that he loves, and he never warms me up for them. I get an email that said, like this morning, I got an email that said, hell yes. That was it. And then a link to a YouTube video. So I'm thinking, okay, I have no idea what this is. And almost every time he sends me a YouTube video, I can only stand about the first minute of it. He sends me 2-minute videos, he sends me 8-minute videos, he sends me 40-minute videos. I barely make it through 1 minute of each of these. And it's just because we've got different tastes. So you could say, he might end up saying, Deb never watches long videos. Not true. I have a couple of people I follow and subscribe to on YouTube. They put up 26-minute videos. I watch them twice sometimes. It's just that for whatever reason, I don't have enough in common with this friend as video love goes, where when he sends me some of these videos, some of them have been great, but most of them, I'm like, I can't make it past the first minute. But that doesn't mean Deb hates long videos. It means Deb doesn't like this stuff. Larry asks, what do you think of the myth of competitive analysis as user research? Well, Larry, you and I think, have a lot in common on this topic and on this answer. We both tend to warn people that when you do a competitive analysis, you are normally going into it with an idea or assumption that one or more competitors is getting it right. And I had a client last year who was trying to design some screens themselves. That's another story. Very nice people trying to design some screens themselves. And basically, they were like, hey, we're just going to rip off Amazon. And they were an e-commerce site because, hey, Amazon's getting it right. So why don't we just do what they do? And the funny part was, by the time they'd sent me their screen, Amazon had changed theirs. So I was like, you can't, first of all, you can't rip off Amazon. Amazon's just Amazon. You're not Amazon. Thing two, Amazon experiments a lot. And by the time you've ripped them off, they're doing something else. So competitive analysis, I do like to do competitive analysis, partially to get more familiar with what competitors are doing and offering and what their brand voice is and what they put out there, just to see if I find anything interesting or inspiring. But anyone who's ever received a competitive analysis for me knows that I am mostly ripping the competitor to pieces. I'm mostly saying, here's something that's not even accessible. Here's crappy information architecture where they have confusing, terrible menus. Here's a homepage with 12 calls to action and it's very unfocused. So I never approach my competitive analysis from, someone here's doing it right, and I really want to highlight this company and make them look like the shining star that we should emulate or copy. I'm typically just treating competitive analysis as an opportunity to get to know the landscape and the domain better, so that I can know who my client is up against or who we need to go past or things like that. So I do like to do competitive analysis, but again, I never. And also, Larry says, what about the myth of competitive analysis as user research? It's not user research. And I saw a little bit of that from some of the bootcamp portfolios that I reviewed, where they would say, oh, yeah, we did some secondary user research, which really ended up meaning Googling stuff. Whether it was looking at competitors or trying to Google for statistics on certain shopping behaviors or things like that, a lot of that they're calling it secondary research and kind of lumping it with user research. So I think that there's a place for some of these things, but we cannot ever, ever, ever claim that these things are user or customer research. Larry says, yes, I see competitive analysis as an indication that the client is focusing on features and not tasks. Right. And that's another thing that I'll sometimes look at when I'm doing competitive analysis is I'll walk through a task. Like I did a project, I think it was 2 years ago, for a company that sells labor law posters. If you're in America or an American territory, you've probably seen those posters that have to hang on the wall that say certain federal and state labor laws. And this company sells those posters, as do many, because they're standard and you have to have them by law. So someone has to buy them from somewhere. And they had a number of key competitors. And I went through competitive analysis. And in each, because the project was focused on certain ways to buy the posters, when I went to each site, I tried to walk through that process from the perspective of a potential assistant at a company who probably has the crappy job of buying the labor law posters. So how fast can I accomplish that task? How quickly can I figure out what this costs? Do I see any special pricing to get them in Spanish and in English? Are any of these companies offering a Braille version? So I was really trying to take what I knew about their users and their customers, as well as some of the things people tend to want to buy, need to buy, should buy, and see how easy was it on these other competitor websites to buy these things. And ultimately, I found that all the competitors but one were really in a worse place than my own client. One had put a little bit more effort into design, but I could tell that the effort they put in was more visual design than UX design, and there were still problems. And my client had ripped that other guy off as far as they could, but they had created some tasks and processes that were pretty ugly. So just a reminder that we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Again, Tanya, hold on to that URL. I promise later I'll make it work. So you guys, we're talking today about debunking UX myths. And I've got a few more in my book in front of me I can talk to. But while I'm doing that, you guys can post to the chat room some things that you've heard. Maybe you're not sure if they're true or not. Maybe you know they're myths. Maybe you need help with an argument that you can make it work to figure out something you can say to people to undo this. So the next one I want to talk about while I wait for your comments is, here it is, move fast and break things, or fail fast. And I find, where is this true? You know, it sounds like a cool soundbite. It got quoted for years, if not what feels like a decade by now. Fail fast, move fast and break things. I think I've even seen that in a few job descriptions. We move fast and break things. Well, you sound kind of bad. So my thought is there's nothing wrong with moving fast if you have good processes, communication, collaboration. There's nothing wrong with breaking things or failing fast if that's internal. I think we were talking about that. Was I talking to you about that before, or was that I don't remember now. So, failing fast can be good if it's during a UX process. If I've got an initial concept and one or two executions of that concept, and I take it to some UX testing, and holy cats, my ideas just fall apart and there's really nothing good about them, I have failed fast, but I have not cost the company that much because engineering didn't build it, hasn't been sent out the release universe, customer support didn't have to struggle with it. It is currently my own failure, which is fine because we've learned early enough to then learn what went wrong and iterate or try a totally different concept. So I'm not against breaking things and I'm not against failing fast as long as it is still internal to your company. Once this has been released to the public and we are failing or breaking, we are kind of losers. We suck. Think about you as a customer. Be selfish for a moment. Turn off your empathy. I know you can't, but pretend you have no empathy. Turn on your ego. Be selfish. How often do you like when you feel like a company's guinea pig? When you try something and it breaks and it fails, you go, did they give a crap? Did they test this with anybody? Nobody has ever looked back and said, you know what I wish we had done more? I wish we had released more stuff to the public that was defective. Because ultimately, break things and fail fast are defects. And whether you like Agile, Lean, Six Sigma, or something else, everyone's against defects. Stop coming up with these phrases that give people permission to release defects. Larry says, I'm suspicious of any strategy focused on failing when it takes just as much effort to focus on succeeding. Yeah, again, I think these are cool startup sound bites. Yeah, our startup is so cool, we'll fail fast, or we're not afraid to fail fast. Congratulations, cool startup with cool startup soundbite. Where are you today? You probably failed, statistically speaking. Similarly, I've gotten my book, a cousin of that, which is also very startup-y. Oh yeah, Larry says, how about the Iowa Caucus app? That sure failed fast. But is anyone proud of that? Did that go well? Is any cool startup bro putting on his Ray-Bans and going, we fail fast? So a cousin of that I've got written down here is, if you're not embarrassed by your first version, you've launched too late. This is a cousin of fail fast because under what circumstances would any startup or company like to be publicly humiliated by any version of our products, services, or experiences? So this is usually said in response to people who are like, oh, well, we shouldn't bother with perfection. We shouldn't aim for perfection. If we're embarrassed by our first version, that's cool. We don't want to launch too late. And I would say, looking back on things that got rushed out, they certainly didn't launch late, but think about those things that got rushed out. How do you feel about those now? Is it good for us to be publicly embarrassed by stuff? Again, this is stuff startups say that companies end up picking up, and it barely makes sense for the startups. It really doesn't make sense for the companies. I have people don't scroll and people don't read here, so Marisol beat me to that one. What about you guys? Anything else that you can think of that are typical UX myths or UX phrases? Anything that you can think of that you want to comment on? We've only got about 10 more minutes together, and we're here to debunk all of these. So let me know what you might want to debunk with me today. Meanwhile, I will also work on trying to fix my portfolio review link for Tanya and other nice people like her. So another one that I've got here in my book is, we must innovate or we must disrupt our industry. Now, we've got Larry Marine here today, and I'm sure I'm going to channel him, but I imagine that he would say, you are definitely not going to innovate or disrupt your industry. Oh, he's put up a good one I'll address next. We're not going to innovate or disrupt our industry if we have not done the correct research with the correct depth and quality of research to understand the users or customers' unmet needs. If we are not understanding our customers, if we're making guesses about them, assumptions about them, if a stakeholder says, we don't need research, we know who these people are and what they want, you are definitely not going to disrupt. You are definitely not going to innovate. You are not going to dominate your market if you don't totally get your customers. I've got little pieces of that throughout my book, but I feel pretty serious about that. Let's see what else I've got in the book. Larry's got a good one here, which is, we'll fix it in training. That is a great myth, and we definitely hear that one a lot. And that has to do with when a company designs something that is not really easy to learn and not really easy to use, what typically happens is someone doesn't want to invest in making it easier to learn or easier to use. And instead they say, you know what? Get the tech writer to write more help files or put more tooltips on there so people can get help, or we'll fix it in training, or build more onboarding so that we can help people uh, do this. And again, these are all bad ideas. These are all bad ideas. Oh, that's weird. Portfolio review should be working. Let me check this again. Oh, I got it. Okay, I'm going to fix this, everybody. Hold on. It doesn't make sense to say, I'm going to build something crappy, but I'm going to fix it later with something else crappy. And so we have to be making sure that we are building great experiences the first time, proactively, predictively, and making sure that we are not claiming, you know what, somehow, this is one of my favorite things, somehow our customer is simultaneously a total idiot, and because how often do you hear that where you work? The customer's an idiot. Somehow the customer is simultaneously a total idiot and some sort of genius who's going to figure out the things they can't figure out. You know what? They'll figure it out. They'll read the help file. They'll ask for help. They'll figure it out. So magically, our customer is simultaneously the dumbest person we know and the smartest person we know. How is that possible? Tanya, I have fixed the link. I will put it back up on the screen. For those of you who would like your first portfolio review free, I have fixed this URL link while we were talking just now, and you can get your portfolio review. Tanya, thank you for your patience. Let's see. Larry's got a few more coming up, but Plexus is joining us, and he says, when pushing to do user research, I was told we aren't an academic institute. That's another fantastic myth we should bust. Just because we want to do something with research doesn't mean that we are academics or doctors or anything else. We are just trying to understand our customer. And it's always amazing, but when marketing says they want to do research, nobody says, we're not an academic institute. Somebody says, ooh, marketing wants to do research, get them some money. Somehow. Larry says, if you don't accurately define your user's problem, the best you can hope to do is solve the wrong problem very well. That you will hear Larry say that probably daily, and he's always right. He says, myth, we can engage the users with content. I think it really depends on the content. Obviously, I'm hoping to engage people with content. You guys are technically my users or customers. I'm hoping to have quality content that you love in a variety of forms. But I know that sometimes content is used on a website, an app, in a system, again, as some sort of training vehicle or some sort of way to give people a lot of information that maybe they do or don't want. So let's see. Larry's got another one. Ooh, we're going to run over time. We only have a few more minutes. So engage the users with content if you have done the deep research that Larry and I are always talking about, and we know what sort of content people would want to know, and we're able to deliver it in a concise way or at the length that people want, then maybe we can engage users with content. But we shouldn't use content to inform people from the sense of teaching them. Again, it's not our training tool. I'm working on a project with someone now, and it's a universe of tooltips because that's what her company wants. They think anytime we have a little hint about something someone could fill out in a form, it must go in a tooltip. And I've tried to explain some of the best practices of where this information goes. If this is really mission critical, then it doesn't hide behind a tooltip. We surface it within the form so people can fill out the form the first time and not be stumbling or guessing. Trying to get to a few more before we wrap up for time. And Tanya, if you're still with us, maybe you can check if that link is working. Larry says, why have I never asked the questions you find in the FAQ, the frequently asked questions? I think that really depends. Some companies are pretty good about using an FAQ, but I like to say, and I want this on a shirt, that FAQ is content without strategy. Ba-dum-ba. Trademark me. Can you trademark that? No, I don't know. Copyright? So the problem is that an FAQ is typically, you know what? We don't think people will understand this. We don't think they're necessarily going to want to go search a help file. So just put a bunch of questions and answers on a page, because certainly all these people who we keep saying don't like to read and won't read, well, they'll read this. So it just totally goes against other things that we say, some myths and some not. So what I always remind people is that if you have important information that you think you want to put in an FAQ, don't use an FAQ. Get the information contextually where people expect to find it. If you're not sure where people expect to find it, try either card sorting or I don't know if the tree test would be the right thing here, but various types of research and testing would help you know where people expect to find certain information. Or, as always, if you design something that is intuitive, we don't have to give people lessons on it like the FAQ. So we don't want to have to give people lessons on things. We want to design it right the first time. Larry is back with more. Larry, you should just be a guest. We should just do a little show together where we just hit the tennis ball back and forth. Who came up with the idea that tooltips should simply regurgitate the same label text for a control? I don't know who came up with that. I would like to know who came up with that. I would hit them with a tennis racket, even though I'm non-violent. Yeah, I definitely see a lot of tooltips misused. People do tend to repeat information in them. My favorite was working on a project a few years ago on a jewelry repair website, and it was like the form was like first name, and then there's like a tooltip, and the tooltip, when you activated the tooltip, it would say enter your first name. I was like, okay, guys, we need to talk about tooltips. This is just so bad, so wrong. You don't need this here. Why is this here? This doesn't help anybody. If they weren't too sure what to put in first name field, enter your first name. Didn't help anybody. So we're winding down for this podcast. I try to keep it to about an hour. This was Debunking UX Myths, and hopefully we've debunked a few that have been on your mind or maybe that circulate around your office that you needed more ammunition on how to counter them. Thanks to everybody who joined in live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Just a reminder to please subscribe on YouTube. I find that when it comes to going live, YouTube is more reliable than LinkedIn. Sorry, LinkedIn. I am enjoying going live on your platform, but it is way more reliable to subscribe on YouTube. You will know right away when I'm live, and there's a chat there where you can also ask questions. So definitely subscribe there. Just some programming notes, as I always do at the end of these. Join me tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. Italy time. Adjust that for your time zone. I am going to be joined by the super interesting Jonathan Tesser. We are going to talk about awesome metrics versus vanity metrics, and he is someone you want to get to know. The following week, I will probably end up missing office hours. So there probably won't be office hours this week unless I can fit one in tomorrow. And there won't be office hours after that because I'm going to be traveling for about a week and I don't know what kind of internet connection I'll have. So there might not be office hours. But we will be back either way on February 27 with a live podcast about planning UX testing. Now, of course, we can't cover everything about planning testing in an hour, so we're going to cover some general things and give you some ideas on where else to get more information on that. And I already have some podcasts planned also for March. So please do keep in touch. Follow me on LinkedIn, subscribe to YouTube, visit the Delta CX website, sign up for your portfolio review if you'd like one. And let me know what you thought of my current system. I'm using a new system for podcasting. I know my video frame rate is off, but I ordered a new camera and it should look better. So thanks to everybody who joined in. I'll be ending the stream and we'll see everybody tomorrow for the podcast with Jonathan Tesser. Thanks again.